Hi, everyone. I'm Natalie Gochner. This is Both Sides of the Aisle. I represent the political middle and have on the political left, Shireen Gorbani.
Hello. Hey, listeners. I hope you're doing well in this back-to-school season.
Yeah, and on the political right, John Dougal.
Hey, great to be with you. Wednesday last week, I told a girl in the neighborhood, she was walking off. I thought she was going to the pool to practice.
Yeah.
Said, have fun at the pool. I didn't know it was the first day of school.
First day of
Yeah.
school.
She looked at me like, what?
Oh.
Yeah. You know, for someone like me, I live on a academic calendar.
Yeah.
Not just because I work at the University of Utah, but just that's kind of my most formative years. And I love fall.
Yeah.
I love getting into fall. And I'm ready to go.
Yeah, I feel like something amazing happened where this morning, even though temperature-wise it didn't actually say it was any cooler on my phone, but as I was out walking my dogs early, it felt cooler.
Yeah.
It felt like we're on the move.
Shireen, as you're walking your dogs, do your neighbors say, hello, President Gorbani? John, she's
Hail to the chief.
got a new gig.
I have a new
So
gig.
I heard.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, no, I should say my neighbors are very supportive and excited. And I'm happy to announce, really honored to lead the work at Planned Parenthood Association of Utah. So this last week, I was officially named the president and CEO. And I think folks know, but I'll just share a little bit of this. Here in this program, I volunteer to do this. We all volunteer to do this. You all have professional jobs as well. So I'm representing, my political thoughts and beliefs. But sometimes when we do have those conversations about, reproductive health care, about abortion access, about, I would say, healthcare more broadly, I hope that you've come to, rely on me as a person who really does have a level of expertise in that area. So I'm really proud to lead an organization of about 100, mostly healthcare providers, 6 health centers from Ogden, 4 in Salt Lake Valley, South Jordan, West Valley, 2 in Salt Lake City, and then also in Orem. And we, the vast majority of what we do is what we consider basic family planning services. So STI testing and treatment, access to birth control, general wellness exams, and then abortion remains legal to 18 weeks in Utah.
Yeah. Well, very good. All right. So, John, I'm excited for Shireen.
I just laughed that some of her neighbors now say they have a president they can support.
Yeah, there you go. Because Shireen lives in the avenues of Salt Lake City.
I live in a blue corner of this city. And I will just also say that one of the things that I have come to have a lot of gratitude, and I would just say I'm very humble about, is people, never really know when they're going to need the services of Planned Parenthood. And folks from all walks of life, from all, I think 28 out of 29 counties last year, walked into our clinic for care. And we're really proud to serve people, no matter of their background or who they voted for, or, we're here to serve.
Well, congratulations.
And as Shireen alluded to, we all have professional jobs, and so none of us are here speaking for our employers. We're all just sharing our personal opinions on
And
what goes on in the political arena.
Is there a lot to share? Let's
There's
go
a
to
lot.
Alaska.
Oh, yeah.
Why not? Hard
Did you
transition.
get the Sarah Palin reports? What she saw out her window?
Oh, my goodness. John, let's ask you to just kind of paint the picture here. I mean, it sounds like you watched this live.
So I did see some of this, the planes coming in and the stairs being pushed up to the doors.
They carried all this live.
Yeah,
on
this
the
was
networks
live
and
on the networks,
cable.
and so I saw a few minutes of this. And I saw President Trump come down the stairs and walk across the tarmac and then get on the red carpet. And then he was standing there waiting for Putin to come out of his plane and come down. And there was a red carpet there, and I think there were some soldiers that were bowing down to him as he was coming down. So it was kind of a little odd from my perspective. And then what was quite odd was President Trump was applauding Putin. I know he likes to clap at different events and stuff like that. I just, given Putin's nature and the horrific way he's governed, and the nature of the war with Ukraine, I just found clapping for him just, an odd thing.
And red carpets and
Red carpets.
giving him audience when he's been isolated from the sort of civilized world a bit.
They then hopped into the presidential beast together and then went off to the summit. And then I didn't see any more, but I saw different news reports. And it's the speculation of, did he get anything? Did he not get anything? It clearly looked like Putin was playing to his ego.
Are they wearing recording devices? Does Putin put something in the car as they're driving that they have to sweep afterwards? I mean, this is the stuff of intrigue.
This is the stuff of intrigue. I also, of course, was reminded Putin is an autocratic dictator who kills journalists.
Would you go so far as to say he's a war criminal?
Yeah, I would.
You would? Okay.
I mean, the numbers are now 30,000 Ukrainian children have been stolen by the Russian government. The atrocities that are occurring at the direction and hands of this individual, and our president literally rolls out a red carpet. Feels to me like we are in the upside down. There are many things that this president does that I disagree with. I think this for me was, I think I've talked about it before, but I served in the Peace Corps in Moldova. Moldova is a former Soviet state. To see kind of up close that relationship and really understand a little bit more about Russian politics than I think maybe your average person, I would just say that, what Putin suffers from is he suffers when he's isolated. He suffers when he is treated like a political pariah. He suffers when we have imposed sanctions for bad behavior. And now what we have, and I'm curious if you listen to Marco Rubio talk about this, try to spin it on the Sunday morning shows. But what we have now is, State Department, we've got a president, basically both sidesing this, suggesting that Ukraine's going to have to give some things up as well. That's a sovereign nation who's had land taken by a war criminal, and where it seems the United States is kind of endorsing that.
Yeah.
Did you see the foreign minister for Russia? What he was doing, what he was wearing?
Tell us more.
Okay, so he was wearing a CCCP, which is basically USSR sweatshirt, trolling the Ukrainians because he ate on his way over chicken Kiev.
Goodness.
So he was totally trolling folks about this whole event.
Wow.
And one of the key things from my perspective is Putin wins by stalling.
Yeah.
Stalling. His tactic is to stall. And so he's winning by stalling.
Yeah.
And he's coming to Alaska. And Alaska used to be part of Russia, right? So territorial swaps is something else, and this kind of played into that narrative.
Yeah. I mean, he's welcome on U.S. soil. I just anyway, what were your thoughts on this?
Oh, listen, I'm
okay with the welcoming onto U.S. soil because, let's try and find peace. And if that means coming here, great, find peace.
There's something that has to change. And I give credit to President Trump for trying really hard to make a change in his weird way of doing it. So I don't want to, defend his tactics, but let's just think about him for a minute. He gave Putin this kind of treatment, and now Putin is saying, I'm willing to negotiate something that gives security guarantees to this country that is NATO-like. He doesn't use the term NATO-like, but they say section whatever-like. And that's a big deal. Today, we're recording on Monday, but we have the leaders of France, Germany, Italy, Britain, Finland, the European Union, and the North Atlantic Treaty Organization all in the White House with Zelensky and the president, our president. So I think it's very odd way of doing international relations, but there's something happening.
Yeah.
I did not hear Marco Rubio, by the way. I heard Steve Witkoff.
Geez. Okay.
And I don't know. I want to say this is what I want to say from the political middle. I think it's shameful to treat Putin that way.
Yeah.
But I am going to reserve judgment until I see what happens in the next couple of weeks. And to your point, if this goes on for months, we've made a huge mistake. But if it goes on for 2 weeks, I'll say, okay, we did something.
Yeah. So I just have to give a plug for a television show that I know John and I both enjoy because I have now finished season 2 of The Diplomat.
People are talking about it.
And I don't know, you
Starring
enjoyed it?
Kerry Russell.
Yeah, who I love from Felicity Days and you love from The Americans, which I also enjoyed. But I do think that it gives a little bit of insight. I think it's certainly, dramatized, overblown, but it gives you a little bit of insight into how delicate these relationships are. And I think how really interesting and complex they can be. The other thing that I'm reading right now is this book called Careless People that's about sort of the rise of Meta and thinking about their global positioning, geopolitical positioning. And when you really kind of get a sense for how complex and how many pieces are moving in the decisions that are made like this, I had to think back to, do we remember when Obama bowed slightly to the Prince of, or King, I guess, of Saudi Arabia, the kind of outrage that we heard from that. And then we literally roll out a red carpet for a war criminal on American soil, and people seem mostly fine with it. So how times have changed.
Yeah. Hey, let's take the last minute and a half and talk about what's going on with redistricting in our country. Set that up, John.
So we've got Texas trying to redraw their maps mid-cycle to pick up 5 more Republican seats. Part of the excuse is at least part of it is when it comes to the upcoming midterm elections,
Year from
usually
now.
the opposing party picks up seats, and so the Republicans want to try and minimize that impact and try and hold control in the House.
Aren't their policies just so popular they can win anywhere?
Well, gerrymandering has been going on since
Oh
1812.
my goodness,
It's
and
both
it
parties
has
have been
lit
doing
a
it.
fire under.
Generally, part of the outrage is it hasn't really been done that often mid-cycle. And so
Yeah.
that's what's stirring people up versus with the
And
regular
it's lit a
census cycle.
fire.
But it's been going on for almost the entire life of our country.
And
So
I have to say, I think it is a big contributor to why our politics in Washington are so broken. When we have seats that are easily won by
Right.
the
One
left
party
or
or
the
the-
right,
yeah.
then we see people who are more ideological and less interested in working on common sense solutions.
Where do you think this ends with Governor Newsom?
I
He's the
think
one
he
I'm
does.
saying is on fire.
So what he's doing is putting forward a ballot initiative. So moving towards an opportunity for Californians to vote to basically do the same thing, but it has some interesting clauses in the legislation that he's moving forward, which is if Texas doesn't do it.
Because they have a redistricting commission.
They do
so
have a
he's got to
redistrict-
change the law to do this.
He does. So if Texas doesn't do it, what they're saying is we won't do it either. If Texas doesn't make this power grab, California won't make this power grab. So there's a pressure release there. And basically what they're saying is that this is a temporary move to ensure that there's some opportunity for balance and representation. I just have to say, I noticed that my representative, Blake Moore, came out against what's happening in Texas, which I was proud of. But I also have to say it felt like an Onion headline, which was like, local man who benefits from gerrymandering suddenly concerned about gerrymandering. So we had an independent commission that did not get to draw our districts. And in fact, our legislature drew them. It is, I think, reasonable that we would have at least one congressional district that would be competitive in Utah. But that's not how our legislature drew our districts.
Okay,
In
I want to
Utah,
give
we
two
talk-
quotes, though.
In Utah, we talk a lot about either donut holes or pizza slices. Pizza slices meaning part urban, part rural in each of the 4 districts. Donut hole meaning basically
Let
one
urban
Democratic
Utah.
district,
Yeah.
urban Salt Lake, Park City versus the rest of the state.
Two quotes that interesting. Representative Blake Moore says that allowing this wildfire to spread mid-decade is a step too far. And then Gavin Newsom. Today is Liberation Day in the state of California. Donald Trump, you have poked the bear, and we will punch back. He's clever.
Well, this is one of the risks.
He's clever.
If you look at the numbers, if every state did this type of activity that Texas is doing, Republicans win that battle, at least in terms of seat count. But then the question is what kind of backlash happens? And if you reduce the Republican margins in each of those seats, are you at risk of some wave of animosity
Yeah.
opposed to this? And so just out of spite, they vote the other way and you actually lose.
Let's take a short break and come back. Natalie Gochner with John Dougal and Shireen Gorbani. Stay tuned.
You're listening to Both Sides of the Aisle on Utah Public Radio. We love to hear from listeners like you. If you would like to send us a comment, email bsotapodcast@gmail.com. That's bsotapodcast@gmail.com. Thanks for listening.
Shireen Gorbani on the left.
John Dougal on the right.
Natalie Gochner in the political center. This is Both Sides of the Aisle. Shireen, I want to just take a second and talk about the White House's efforts right now to review Smithsonian exhibitions to make sure that they align with President Trump's interpretation of history, to say it bluntly.
Yeah.
I lived in Washington for several years, lived within 2 blocks of the National Mall. I
Oh,
lived right
incredible.
behind National Archives building. And we homeschooled our kids for some of that time and used the mall, the Smithsonian's, as our, place to go to school. What a gift, right?
It's an incredible gift.
Yeah.
I thought the quote was interesting, right? That the exhibit should be accurate, patriotic, enlightening, ensuring they remain places of learning, wonder, and national pride for generations to come. I have to say, for me, that's what they are. That's what they have been. I think we serve ourselves well when we understand the complex nature of this country's history, and to see artifacts and to see the kind of coming together and the moving forward is what makes me proud to be an American on the days when I can still muster that feeling. I think that there's like a real sense of loss to imagine that being Trump washed in a particular way. I don't know. What do you?
Well, I'm thinking specifically about slavery.
Yeah.
the Black History Museum, the Native American History.
The Native American History Museum is incredible.
I had this interesting thing with my son this weekend. For whatever reason, he's taken an interest in natural disasters, Katrina, things like that. And he was asking me a lot of questions. And then it went into talking about World War I and World War II. And it was, my son's an engineer, and it was just him talking to his mother about history. And he was fascinated, and he's probably spent too much time in math classes and not enough time in humanities classes. Yeah. And he was just...
How can you spend too much time in math classes?
Yeah, for sure.
Seriously.
For sure. But I found myself just sharing with him so many lessons I've learned from understanding history. Not that I know it well, but I'm just saying as a mother to their child. And I would say a huge chunk of what I've learned about our history happened in museums.
Oh, yeah.
That weren't... I don't know, made politically correct, but rather had candor about the frailties of our past.
Or were they politically correct for whoever had the museum? I mean, this is one of those things. Mm-hmm. Unfortunately, history is written by the victors. I mean, we recognize that through centuries and millennia. I clearly have concerns with Trump pushing the Smithsonian to change, but I also highlight this is one of the risks of the government controlling museums or controlling our educational system or on and on and on. And this is why I want to reduce the involvement of government, because then individual private citizens and groups can represent history as they feel appropriate or educate as they feel appropriate, rather than one, president or one, governor or whoever it might be driving a certain ideology.
Yeah. Well, okay. Let's go to some other kind of local news. Let's go to Governor Cox's world. He's got a top commander who's been demoted.
Former top commander.
Army Review Board knocked the retired two-star general's rank down to lieutenant colonel following a probe of the commander's behavior. This is
Utah National Guard. So this is directly under the governor, and it took the Army to go investigate this and demote this guy.
And it sounds like that was over engagement in inappropriate relationships with a subordinate.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So just one of many tough things in a governor's office trying to work through these issues. Anything else you want to add, John?
Well, I mean, this gets to one of my concerns with the National Guard, which is, okay, do they really report to the governor? Do they report to the military? Where are the lines? And I just don't like how it's structured these days.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. We've also got Senator Mike Lee, Shireen, who wants to publish a book on the Uniparty. Okay. And I guess it's the
Uniparty is really all Republicans and Democrats, kind of in Congress who just
think alike.
And they pretend like they're different parties, but they're really one and the same. And that's the Uniparty.
Mm-hmm. He's criticizing uniformity rather than bipartisanship. I'm trying to think of the nuance here. I think of our Congress right now as deeply divided, and I don't see a Uniparty.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't either. I mean, I would be tempted to understand but not purchase this book. I do think that there is a real sense of groupthink in our government generally. I think that what's depressing to me about the moment that we're in is that it does seem like we have stopped really thinking big ideas.
Yeah.
And when one party's big idea is small government, not to be a jerk to you, John, but that idea is not inspiring to me. And then I see kind of on the edges that the big ideas that we have are sometimes quite popular in the public sphere, but have very little visionary leaders that are trying to carry them forward in ways that are productive, responsible, fundable in this country.
Yeah.
And the Uniparty, I think that Mike Lee would talk about is, by and large, it depends on, the day, but both Republicans and Democrats in Congress defer too much power to the president. Mm. Okay. Depends on the day, depends on who the president is. But both of them are overwhelmingly deferring power to the president. They're out of control spending at Washington, D.C. They're bankrupting the country, on and on and on, getting into all sorts of aspects of our economy. And this would be the Uniparty that Mike Lee talks about.
This is why the federal militarization of Washington, D.C. just throws me off. This notion that we think that Congress and the president have more capabilities to do things well than local government, because I've not seen anything that tells me that Washington can conduct itself in a defensible way.
In a defensible way. I have to say, I've really been thinking about this because it's so frustrating to me that Trump is using the National Guard in this way in Washington, D.C. When, for example, we recently had a person show up and shoot up the CDC. Start that. That, no comment from this president. Somebody who goes by the name Big Balls is carjacked, which is not funny. Like that's horrific. That's awful. And suddenly we have the National Guard deployed in Washington, D.C. The lack of care for what is actually happening in this country and the lack of attention, I think, to the kinds of deep-rooted violence that we're starting to see bubble up across many places, political violence. This president does not care.
Yeah.
This is for show.
I want to just...
From the Republican side, we would say the previous president didn't care either.
Yeah. I would just say in the Senator Lee world, one time, I think it was David Brooks wrote a column, and he said that the U.S. Senate has become a writer's colony. And it's this idea that these senators, rather than doing the work of the American people, are becoming authors. And
it's because they can make money writing books.
Well, I just
can't make money doing
caution
other
the
things,
senator about that. That like, okay, he's a brilliant guy. He's got a lot of ideas, and I love him capturing them and whatnot. But make sure you do the work of the people.
But a lot of those it's more about TV and Twitter and et cetera, et cetera.
But we got Representative Malloy, who says she's tackling the most important issue in Congress. She defines that, Shireen and John, as removing federal barriers to building energy, infrastructure, and mines. And, I like what she's doing here.
I'm not sure I call it the most important, but this is a really important issue. This is a really important issue.
That we, in this state that we're trying to dip our toe in a big way into nuclear power. And if we want to do that, we're in a 15-year, time frame.
Well, we should be mining resources here rather than looking for China to supply them to us and being dependent on them for rare earth elements.
Yeah, I guess I would just say in a moment where we're seeing deregulation in a way that is certainly going to have complex health outcomes for our country, for our environment, for people who live near these kinds of mines. I hope that there is some attention from her on what happens when we actually start pulling these rare earth minerals out. When I look across the valley and see, our mountaintop removal right here in our own valley, I believe there's some sort of balance here, but I don't know that that's a big part of her.
Balance is the word.
Yeah.
I'll say that from the political middle, but I'll also say just look at I'm going to look at electricity generation and consumption in this state. We've always generated more than we use. Last couple of years, it's almost equal. Yeah. And it's this notion that electric vehicles and artificial intelligence, the demand for electricity is on the rise, and we're not producing enough. We've got to get data centers, are consuming so much, and our world is demanding so much.
Well, and we need to produce more, and people will demand that we produce it cheaper.
Yeah. Okay, I want to ask you two, what are you two both feeling right now about the state of our economy and what you're feeling? We got this consumer sentiment information that, basically shows that attitudes about the future of the economy in the Beehive State are looking up a little bit better. Just not as well as they were pre-COVID, but what are y'all thinking?
I have to say, I'm definitely noticing, I would say groceries, continue to be expensive.
They're more expensive, aren't they?
They are. I have a problem with my car.
Oh, dang.
And I was like, oh no, I haven't had to purchase a car in a decade, and I hope I don't have to. It's sending up prayers for the Nissan Leaf. But I do think that there are starting to kind of look at some of these bigger things. There have been significant cost increases in recent years.
Yeah.
I don't know.
I listened to a podcast this weekend, John, that was getting into the nitty-gritty of inflation, the producer price index, consumer price index, just trying to understand the various components, which parts were in import sensitive.
I never imagined you'd be listening to that kind of stuff.
I did it for it was like an hour and 20 minutes of listening. But, the economic message about tariffs and prices is really that we're just starting to see it.
Uh-huh. And I think for folks, a lot of folks that I talk with, they're still feeling pain. Mm-hmm. I would say they're not sure how much of this is still Biden carryover or Trump induced, hoping that Trump fixes things long term, but, kind of concerned about what that really means.
Yeah.
And like you said, it's this, indeterminate. Economists will say, the tariffs will negatively impact. Yeah. But
well, it's interesting when you think of our discussion about redistricting and so much energy and effort on, having the electeds pick who votes for
their voters. Yep.
Instead of focusing on public policies that need, to be, optimized to serve the public. I mean, and in this case, our trade policies.
Sure. But unfortunately, I would say what we have now is, for example, in Utah, all of our representatives voted for the big, beautiful bill that's about to skyrocket people's healthcare costs. We have an unusually high number of folks on the ACA, so on Obamacare in the state, in a good way. That means more people have care. The subsidies that went into their premiums are going away. They're, in some are already gone. When we think about the folks who are being kicked off when it comes to, DACA folks, the way that there have been different accommodations made for different categories of people, a lot of that got rolled back to, again, fund tax cuts for billionaires. And what that is going to do is drive up those core costs that Utah families rely on.
Yeah. John, we got just like 15 seconds in the program. Quick rebuttal or comment?
Shireen, I agree with you. The healthcare system's broken.
There we go.
Too much federal involvement. It's broken.
And next week on Both Sides of the Aisle, let's try and talk about some of the solutions to these problems.
Sounds
What do you
good.
think?
I love it. Let's do it.
John Dugo, Shireen Gorbani, Natalie Gochner. Programs produced by Anthony Scoma. Thanks for listening.